Alright, here's the piece that we'll be working on today. As you can see, it's kind of an odd shape. I don't even know what kind of fossil this is, to be honest with you. This is just one of those pieces that I picked up a really long time ago and said I would work on it during the winter. And here we are 2 years later, finally getting to it. So the plan for today is to knock this piece out. Now, as you can see, there is a nice fracture in it. I don't expect to get this out in one piece, but what I'm going to try and do is keep the fractures as clean as possible. That way we can glue it back together. And then kind of explore around the rest of this piece here, because it could have some other things lurking around in there. I'm not sure yet. So I won't spend too long on this, but I like to go over it every time just in case someone is watching for the first time. But the safety equipment we'll be using today is just a pair of safety goggles. Any type of safety goggles or glasses will do. And then we have our N95 mask. Now this is a pretty important part of our safety equipment today, because that rotary tool right there will throw up a ton of fine particle dust, and we don't want to breathe any of that in. So we're just going to kind of go around the fossil gently here, not really press the issue, and see if we can't pop it out. Because as you can see here, we do have some nice separation in between the fossil and the rock on the bottom side. And if anything else comes up along the way, I will let you guys know. Besides about 20 minutes of practice beforehand, this is my first time getting to use my new rotary tool to prep a fossil. Now, although I do have experience using rotary tools in the past, there's a few big differences between the two tools. One being that this one is battery powered, so while it does have a little bit more of a kick to it, I can't necessarily go for hours on end with this. I'll have to take breaks and recharge the battery and all that fun stuff. And on top of that, there's actually no numbers printed over here on my dial. So I'm not exactly sure how many RPMs I'm using here. I'm kind of guessing. I'll have to go back later on and sharpie in some lines to kind of give me a good idea, or at least a ballpark of where I'm at. So regardless of what comes from this fossil prep, it'll be good practice with my new tool. So we're definitely not using the right bit here. I'm going to change to more of a rounded tip bit instead of this flat tip. Like I just touched on a few seconds ago, this is a new tool. So at this point, I'm just trying to get a feel for how this tool is actually going to work. And I'm also playing around with the different bits a little bit, just to see how much material the different types of bits will actually take off at once, and which ones will kind of give me more of a finer sand, so to speak. But at this point, it's pretty clear that we're going to be in it for the long haul. So here's what we got done so far. As we take a look on the edge here, that bottom edge, all that white area there along the fossil is what's been exposed. So you can just get an idea of how much material we've actually removed. And then on the back side, we're also working down that way too, so we can eventually pop this whole thing out. I'm still unsure of what this fossil could be, but we'll have to wait another day to find out, because my battery just died. And then we got some storms coming in tomorrow, so I'm not sure when I'm going to get back to it. But that's what we have for right now. So after about 3 hours of prep work, we finally made some headway. We got this corner piece off. For starters, I'm super excited about how this turned out. If you remember in the beginning of the video, I knew this piece was going to split off like that, but I wanted to be able to get a nice clean face to be able to glue it back together. And that's exactly what we did. Unfortunately, there wasn't any more detail on this underside. In fact, I think the top side was better than the bottom was. And then as you can see, I marred it up there pretty good with the rotary tool, which is my fault. It was getting real dusty. I should have found a way to clear away some of the dust as I was working on it, but that's all part of the learning process. As we take a look at the rest of the rock, you can see we still have our work cut out for us. Not only do we have the other half of that mystery fossil to get off, but we also have that little exploratory mission we're going to do, where we're going to split this rock in half and see if there's not anything else in between the layers. So I'm pretty excited for that. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and split this rock in half right now. As long as we're careful with it, we should be able to avoid hitting this fossil. Not only that, but after seeing how the first piece came off, I think that the vibrations from trying to split this rock might pop the rest of this piece off. So we'll get a 2-for-1 deal there. And we have our nice little pick here. It's more of a flat edge, so it'll split the rock really nice as long as we use our hammer properly. And then we got a book bag sitting on my lap here just to protect my legs as we hammer against this rock. And as always, we have our safety glasses. Now, I've probably said this a million times, but just in case I forgot, since it's taken like a week and a half for me to prep this fossil, we're going to be working along this fracture line right here. So it goes horizontally right through the middle of the rock, and it continues all the way around the rock. You can't see it as well in other spots, but it's definitely there. So that's where we'll be working first, and I'd be willing to bet that's the only spot we need to work. When it comes to splitting rocks, it's pretty straightforward, especially when it comes to this piece, because it already has a nice fracture going through it. But any other rock, you typically want to bounce around between multiple different spots just so you can take full advantage of that fracture in the rock. Otherwise, if you hit in one spot continuously, you're more likely to just chip it off piece by piece instead of actually splitting the rock. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on the way you look at it, we were able to get this mystery fossil out in 4 pieces. Plus, we have super clean breaks on every single surface. So, gluing it together is going to be relatively easy. And then as we take a closer look at the surface there, it is pretty cool. So that's also a plus. One weird thing to note about this fossil is that everything that was exposed up top is that nice brown limestone color. And then everything that was underneath the rock is super white, and it's got black specks on it. Not really sure why that is, but we'll go ahead and document that right now to take a look at later on. And you can see the color change on the outside of it too. The inside. So that's pretty cool. Now, I was hoping to get a positive ID on this piece, but in all honesty, there's no detail whatsoever to be had on this fossil. I was hoping to get some suture lines or maybe some defined segments within this piece, but there's just absolutely nothing to be had. So, at the very least, it'll stay a really cool mystery. And then as we take a closer look at the rock as a whole, when we split it in half, there wasn't anything to be had in between the layers, which isn't all that surprising, but I was also pretty hopeful that we would at least find something. As you can see here up on the corner, We do have a little bit of a sediment change. I think this limestone's turning into dolomite or something along those lines. I'm not really sure of the geological processes in which that happens, but it does give it a pretty interesting look in my opinion. As we turn our attention to the spot in which our mystery fossil used to sit, you can see that the limestone underneath remains relatively undisturbed. Now, there's no detail to be had or anything, but the reason why I point this out is because unlike a majority of fossils you'll find in the field, there was nice separation in between the actual rock and the fossil itself, which allowed us to get the fossil out in the condition that we did. So, in closing, it's safe to say that although our fossil prep went as planned, we didn't really uncover any more information about this mystery fossil, which is the way it goes sometimes. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you were at least able to take away something from watching the process of this prep. Which leads me to my next point. Down below in the comments, let me know if you like the time-lapse fossil preps or if you want to see more of an extended version of the fossil preps. I know this prep took me about 3 hours, so you definitely don't want to see all that in real time. But if you would like to see the little things that I do, or just the little comments that I have here and there, go ahead and let me know down below. But until then, stay safe and rock on.